Hi, welcome. I'll be doing a little tutorial on how I draw fur. Keep in mind a lot of what I talk about is specific to my style and may not fit yours. These are just tips and concepts I've learned over the years that helped me, so hopefully some of them help you out too. Alright, so when I'm drawing fur, I first like to block in the bigger tufts because fur generally doesn't present itself as just a bunch of singular strands. It collects together into tufts that also generally follow the same direction depending on what part of the animal you're drawing. So since it's twisting, its body is twisting, it normally will go in the direction of the twist. So this way, that's the direction of my fur. And I've laid down a base layer of shading. I like to make it all dark at first so that I can easily see when I place down my tufts where they are. So there's a first layer, and you can see when you look at a picture of, say, this wolf right here, you can see that the tufts, there will be a top layer, top of this tail, there's a little layer there, and then from beneath that layer, another layer comes out, and it's like that the whole way down the tail. And since the light source is coming from above, that top layer, this top layer right here, will cast a shadow on the layer beneath it, and the layer beneath it will cast a shadow on the layer beneath it, so on and so forth. And that is why I like to make the whole area where I'm going to be drawing the fur dark beforehand, so that when I start drawing that second layer, I can smudge it with this smudge tool, and that essentially is the shadow cast down by this top layer. Now we can go in and blur this top area of all of these tufts on the second layer. I like to make sure I'm keeping soft versus hard edges in mind when I do this. So because the light source is coming from this direction, this area of the tufts right here will be illuminated by this light source coming. So the other area back here will be shaded in because the light doesn't quite reach it so well. But then since these tufts are kind of overlapping, this tuft, there will be a hard edge since this part of it will be bright, but this part of this tuft will be dark, and so on and so forth. I might go in and add a little bit of extra volume to the bigger ones, such as this first one right here. They're all individual pieces, so the larger clumps might have individual clumps within them. But overdoing it with more than a couple of these pieces can make it look excessively detailed, which is honestly something that I struggle with. It's difficult to tell when enough detail is enough, so I tend to either add too much or too little. Generally, your intuition is the best guide for that. I like to zoom in and view whatever I'm drawing as like a thumbnail image so that I can tell what detail is really necessary. Now that we've done that, I'll go in with another layer of shading on top of it. Alright, so I've finished up the main area of the fur. I've added some little shapes here and there among the darker and lighter areas. Just add a bit more volume to the pieces. And I've also added a couple of stray strands of hair that still kind of follow the general direction of the fur. At this point, I've pretty much gotten all of the basic shapes and whatnot down, so we can start with the lighting and the backlighting, which mostly just more shapes. In pieces that are hit with direct lighting, such as this piece right here, it's good to just make it a simple shape because areas hit by strong lighting and or in strong shadow don't tend to have a lot of detail. I'll also add some stray hairs in areas hit by strong lighting. And you can also do the backlighting. I already kind of started here. It's good to balance out hard edges with soft edges on the other side. Soft or rounded edges. Sometimes I like to add little pieces that aren't quite attached to anything or aren't attached on one side. Now in this middle area here, sometimes I like to go in with another layer that is sort of an in-between between these two, this medium shade and this light shade. And I will go in and add a couple of strands that just go over both of these areas. Another thing that you can add if you want to add a little bit more detail is, for example, on this sidewalk you can see as you get to the areas on the edges of strong lighting, you can see a kind of a saturated orange tint on the edges. Strong lighting tends to do that, where the edges of the lighting will be rather saturated. So we can incorporate this into the drawing by choosing a more saturated shade, adding them to the edges of these strong shapes. So I've made a little chart here to summarize. So first thing I like to keep in mind is direction of the fur, which way it's going or which way it's facing. Second thing I like to keep in mind is hard versus soft edges. You can see that here. I made a couple little examples. So this would be a soft edge right here, and this would be a little hard edge. I also like to keep in mind volume, which is what I was talking about with the shapes here. Little lighter shapes on the sides facing the light, even in the dark areas, to add a little more volume to the little tufts. Lighting, how in areas of strong light, there's generally less detail, so it often looks nice to draw them as just simple shapes. Also, in reflective or backlighting, on the opposite side of the light source, tends to be a more desaturated, often a muted purple or blue tone. Readability, which is also just readability and detail both kind of tied together, along with hard and soft edges and contrast. Whether you can tell where one shape ends and the other begins, or in this case, when one tuft ends and the other begins. And then color and saturation, so these little bits of saturation on the end of areas in strong light. You can also play around with the color and make this whole area more saturated and this whole area that's not lit very well more desaturated. Alright, that's all I've got. This is more just a compilation of little tips and things that I've learned over the years, so hopefully this helped you a little bit, just like they helped me when I first learned them. Thanks for watching.